My name is Marlit Hayslett, and I have been with GTRI for about 11 years now, and I do a real strange thing there. I do public policy research, and specifically my team looks at what states are doing to advance science, technology, and innovation. And I will just give you a full disclaimer, I am not a GIS person in any way, shape, or form. I call Danielle as soon as I have a question about that, but I hope I can offer you kind of a new and kind of interesting look at this. It's just going to be a snapshot, and I'm not talking very long. So this is kind of an outline of what I'm going to share with you. What is science, technology, and innovation policy? What's kind of the overall picture, and where does GIS fit? And then some observations about GIS policy at a state level and sort of a couple of states to watch. And so when you hear me say STI, if I happen to slip into that acronym, what I mean by that is science, technology, and innovation. And specifically, from a public policies perspective, what that is trying to get at is how can science, technology, and innovative activities contribute to the normal day-to-day life and the areas that the government is responsible for, be that education, healthcare, transportation, economic development. What is the role? And that's a conversation y'all are having right here, right now, is what's the role of GIS in some of these discussions. This is sort of this is the list of keywords that my team is tracking. This was actually from 2010. It's about 70 words. We're up to about 150 now. And what this is we're looking into legislation. We're looking into individual bills, and we've got a sophisticated search engine that picks these up, and we've got other criteria we apply. But what we're looking for is the actual bills that include this language. And so you'll see lots of words here, cybersecurity, homeland security technology, stem cells, STEM education, renewable energy, kind of your classic science, technology, and innovation activity. So this is that big picture I told you about. At what frequency do states introduce and enact legislation on STI topics? And this is in 2010. There were about 3,300 bills introduced. 555 were enacted for a rate of about 16%. And to sort of put that in perspective, if any of you interact with your local legislature, your state legislature, in general, a state legislature will introduce a couple thousand, it depends on the size of the state, but anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 bills in their legislative session. And of that universe of bills, that's everything. That's tax, that's social policy, everything. They'll pass into law roughly 10%. So we're watching this trend of science legislation, science-oriented legislation that's trending at a higher rate of enactment. We're sort of curious as to kind of what the research question is there. Let's see. All right, just out of kind of interest here, the top 10, when we stack all those, there were 70 on that previous slide, when we stack them all side by side as to how often a bill got picked up about it, the top 10 words, 6 of them are related to energy. So you've got renewable energy, alternative fuels, biofuels, clean energy. Those are if you just stack them up in order of most to least. All right, so what about GIS? So this is sort of over the past several years, this is what these are the numbers, raw numbers of bills that we found. So Danielle mentioned that she fed me the Kool-Aid, and so we started tracking GIS back in 2010, and that year 68 bills were introduced across all 50 states that contained the word geographic information system and met our other criteria for inclusion in our data set. And of those 68, 12 of them were enacted, and so that is an enactment rate of 17%. In 2011 and 12, you can see that number is going up, and you can see that the enactment rate is going up. Part of what's happening there is those 2 years are not yet completely validated, so some of those will not meet our criteria. A real simple example, if you've ever looked at legislation, it can be a hodgepodge of stuff, just a Swedish buffet, and somebody's trying to get any one thing in there. So if the word occurs only once, that does not make it eligible. In that bill, it doesn't make it eligible for inclusion. So I'm expecting these numbers to go down a little bit. I'm expecting 2011 to probably be in the 70 to 80 range of introduced once they meet our criteria, and that enactment rate to go down to probably 20%, which is still, there's a comment here being made on how much GIS legislation is being introduced. This is 2012. I pulled this up yesterday. These are bills that have actually been signed by their state governor. There are 28 of them here. And these are, they're dealing with kind of, you would expect them to deal with redistricting, elections, public utilities, and land use. But this is incredible. Dr. Folger mentioned a few minutes ago about the legislative process. He just very quickly mentioned how much work a bill has to go through before it actually becomes law. We're sitting in May, and this is almost 30 bills introduced. Something is happening in the national dialogue, the state level dialogues as it relates to geographic information systems. So these are the observations. Obviously, the legislation is increasing, and I believe, I would assume that the understanding of how you can use GIS, its applications, is increasing by virtue of the enactment rate. Okay, we understand it behaves in this way, and now we can, regulate how we're going to use it. And then, as I mentioned, the main topics are sort of very expected: elections, redistricting, land use, and public utilities. There's a couple outliers that are kind of interesting. I don't have time to talk about them this morning. So these are the two states based on their legislative frequency. And when I put them up side by side, I'm like, gosh, those states really resemble each other. But so Mississippi and Rhode Island. And let me take you back to this list. And I don't know if y'all are able to see this, but Mississippi's got 2 bills that are GIS specific. These other bills about elections, redistricting, public utilities, GIS is sort of a peripheral tool that's being used to exercise whatever the other topic is. And that's great, that's terrific. But Mississippi's got specific activity going on with GIS as the focus. Rhode Island has got about, 7 or 8 bills down there. One of them which is related to renewable energy standard. And so I would suggest that those 2 states, based on their legislative frequency and the content of that legislation, are worth paying a little bit of attention to.